Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the June 26th Undeniable session with Get Her Hired. I'm Kate Wade, and I've got with me here today our special guest, Kathy Arnold. She's a principal partner over at the Naughton Group, is an executive recruiter there. She also runs her own organizational effectiveness company that's called Peacock Blue, which maybe some people might be interested in learning more about. Um, and we really want to get into this session today to talk with Kathy as an executive recruiter, like just get all of the information we've been dying to get. Even just this morning, I had people asking me questions like, how come no one writes back to me? All that kind of stuff. So we're going to get into this with Kathy. But welcome to Seen, Chosen, Hired, what recruiters want you to know in 2025. And this special episode here with Kathy is going to really introduce us to some fun topics today. If you don't know Kathy yet, she is a trusted HR expert. She has been CHRO. She's been the VP. She's basically been head beep in charge, right? So she's done all the stuff in HR for very large organizations. And now she consults and works to lead on organizational culture, leadership, and strategy. She's really passionate. For me, when I see that a woman says she's passionate, I translate that to skilled, Kathy. So I'm going to say you are skilled in inspiring leaders and organizations to be better and to solve systemic problems while bringing others along on the ride. She's someone who naturally sees the big picture. And I gotta let everyone know this too. She was my boss at one time, and she was one of three best bosses. I had three really good bosses in my life before I became my own boss. I'm still not a good boss to myself sometimes. So Kathy's a better boss to me than I am to me even. And so I had a great relationship with her at CH Robinson. So today we're going to have some real conversation, identify some gaps that maybe we can fill in on our resumes or in our search approaches, and talk with Kathy about how we can better prepare ourselves to be good candidates for the search. And Kathy, I want to turn the microphone over to you for a moment, give you an opportunity to share more about yourself, what we should know, and what you're up to.
Yeah. Kate, that was a wonderful introduction. Thank you.
You're
And it's
welcome.
funny, I sometimes forget that I was your boss. Like that's not something that's meaningful in my relationship with you. So it's a funny reminder. But that just tells you that I've had a bit of a journey over time. So quick arc to my journey, because I think it makes a connection to how I think about recruiting and people's careers. I am a first generation college student. So
Oh,
no one in
really?
my family went to college. My elder brothers didn't go to college. My parents didn't go to college. And so I had to figure that stuff out myself and what I wanted
Yeah.
to do. And I largely did that by trying to not do what my brothers did, like make the opposite decision. So like so many of these things that you do in your life are shaped by others. That was my big aha. I was like, oh, I see my
Yeah.
brothers not doing the college thing. Maybe I should try something different.
Yeah.
Um, and and I didn't know what I was doing, so I ended up with an English degree. But I did get a business minor and found that I liked human resources. And so when I followed a boy
Mhm.
to Minnesota, and he went to a degree,
Stop it.
right, a PhD, I got a graduate degree in human resources because
Yeah.
like what was I going to do while he was in school? So I kept the degree, not the boy, and launched a human resources career that has been a really good fit for me. But I do feel like while I worked hard to get there, I lucked out in finding it. I lucked out in finding it.
Mm.
Um, and then my very first job, I was hired by someone who I now call my work mom, who it remains in my life, who has been a lifelong mentor, who has helped me get almost every job I've gotten, who has guided me. And so another, when I think about like career and recruitment lesson is, who are you surrounding yourself with? Who who is on your side talking you through these big decisions. And she brought me through my early career in human resources, where I did some basic work, worked with Kate at C.H. Robinson for 13 years. So that was really where I cut my teeth. Took a turn into consulting and sales of consulting at Willis Towers Watson, which, for those of you who don't know, global organization, risk and HR consulting. So I was market-based here in the Twin Cities with some of the largest organizations. So in their understanding, like, what are they trying to achieve, and then selling them stuff to help them do it. Did that for 5 years before I decided I wanted to go back and lead human resources, and became the CHRO at St. Thomas. Kate, one of your questions that you fed to me was like, what led you to become a partner at Naughton Group, which is what I'm doing now.
Yeah.
I was running Peacock Blue. So I left St. Thomas last summer with the intent of creating space in my life to be with my mother, who is 87 and living on her own in Orlando, where I grew up, to be there for her when I wanted to, and for how I wanted to, how as long I want, like, just be there. And so I needed to create something different for myself. Naughton Group found me. So Terry Naughton is the founder of Naughton Group.
Yeah.
And as I was talking to my network about, like, well, how do I do this? What am I going to create for myself that keeps me engaged in a career that I love and available to my family, to whom I'm dedicated? And she convinced me that A, I'd be good at this because I've never really done it before. And B, that it would fit well into this idea of a life that I want to create. And at the same time, what she and I figured out as we were talking this through was, if I wanted to do human resources consulting and work with clients on organizational transformation and strategy, that fits really well very often with executive leadership roles and needing to fill them. And so I've had a number of clients where I've been in helping them with succession plan or executive development, and then they have an opening for an executive role. And because I know them and because I'm connected to them, it makes it really easy for me to also recruit for those leadership roles. So that connection is really nice. And in fact, I can't imagine doing executive recruiting without also being connected to organizations in a different way.
Yeah. Yeah. So you probably have, you're not alone in this. I'm certain there are other recruiters out there that have some kind of similar path to you, where you have that connection into the business. And I know as a recruiter, it's so important to have that connection in and to nurture those relationships with the companies, but you just have it at a whole nother level, basically, with how you're doing your work, Kathy, and combining that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the
So
hope.
actually, you can really bring us insights from the hiring executive team's perspective, as well as from an executive recruiter perspective.
Yes. Yeah. I've kind of sat on every side of this table. I mean, I've also been presented as a candidate, right, by executive recruiters. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
feel like I know the space pretty well.
Yeah, well, we know you do. We know you do. There's no scrubs that come here. So I'm gonna launch a little poll right now. And if you happen to be on the screen right now, if you're looking for a role currently, if you're not looking for a role, like maybe you're looking for a role, we're getting 100% of the people here are looking for a role right now. I think, yeah, okay. 100% of people are looking for a new job. So thank you for doing that. And then I have another question for you all. Let me go back. One more poll question. Have you ever gotten a role in the past through a recruiter? Okay, this is getting a little bit more variety. We've got a number of people, about 50% of people are saying they have gotten a role through a recruiter before. So that's about half our audience have worked with and gotten a role. About 30% have not worked with one before or not gotten a role through one. And I love this, are optimists. There are about 20% of people who are saying, not yet. I have not yet gotten a role through a recruiter. Okay. good to know just who we've got here in the audience. So it sounds like there's some experience working with recruiters. Everyone here is looking for a job right now. So now that we've got that dialed in, let's start with some questions for you. Are you ready to go, Kathy?
I am. I am
Okay,
ready to go. I think so.
fantastic. All right. Well, and everyone here online, we've got Anne Marie and Lourdes from the Get Her Hired team, and they're available to monitor the questions. So as soon as you like, you can put some questions in the Q&A. You can put the questions in the chat. If you want to make sure you're anonymous, you can put the questions definitely through the Q&A function if you find that. Also, you can use the chat function and just chat to the hosts and the panelists if you like. Okay, that way your name stays out of the fray if that's something that's important to you. Otherwise, you're welcome to say hello to everybody and put your comment in. All right. So, Kathy, you've over the years talked with hundreds, I'm sure, hundreds of people that are making career transitions. What do you find are some themes that are coming up for people as they are making transitions? What do you see?
Yeah. Um, well, I want to do a quick thing here, Kate. So I will answer that question. I want to
Thank
just
you.
make sure, like the lens that I'm coming through, and I'm sharing this mostly from my own personal perspective. Before I was in recruiting, I was confused about like recruiters and what they do and what that role is and how to access
Oh,
them.
yes.
Like super confused. Like I
Thank
was
you.
confused.
Yes.
So when because you were asking the questions like, have you worked with a recruiter? And I was like, oh yeah, how would you answer that? How would I have answered it? And I would have been confused. So to me, and Kate, you tell me what you know that's different. I think of three types of recruiters. One is the in-house recruiter. Like you've got a company and they have a team that works for them. They work for that company and they help find talent to bring into that company. And so in-house recruitment. Um, Often under resourced, often like trying to do the entire part of a recruitment cycle from finding candidates all the way to giving them a great candidate experience to hire, like all the interviewing processes, all the scheduling, right? Like that's your in-house recruiter. You've got a contingent recruiter group that is actually not dedicated to a company, but what they will do is go and find candidates and then present candidates to a company, whether or not that company actually asked them to or not. Right. So they're
Mhm.
out trying to sell candidates to a firm. I would say that,
Okay.
that's not, I would recommend you try not to use a contingent recruiter because as an HR person, I didn't like that approach from contingent recruiters because I hadn't asked them for candidates. I hadn't vetted them as a recruiter to know that they were going to find me valid candidates. So I didn't always trust that a contingent recruiter would be useful to me.
Mhm.
And then retained executive recruiters, which is where I'm coming from. That's what Naughton Group is. And these are companies that are paid, these are recruitment firms that are paid by their client to go and find candidates for roles. Typically, the roles we're asked to fill are, C-suite roles, vice president roles, sometimes director level roles, often hard to fill roles. Not like they're not giving it to their in-house recruiter for a reason. It's because it's going to take a long time to find the person, or it's a high touch candidate experience that they're looking for, and those in-house recruiters don't have a lot of time to do that. And so we're hired by the client to go out and find. Often we're looking for candidates that just you wouldn't know that they're looking for a job. Like we're in there trying to find the candidate you don't know is there. So
Oh, yeah.
we are paid by the company based on that company hiring the person that we found for them.
Great. I
Okay, so
think, Kathy, thank you for explaining that. And, people will say to me, and I think what you described as a contingent recruiter sounds like what a lot of people call a headhunter, which is a
mhm,
word I don't like.
right.
Um, it's a very weird commodity of
Yeah,
things to hunt.
yeah.
But anyway, yeah, and I find that it's something I advise people away from as well, in that it's not necessarily your interests that are at stake there all the time. So, but the in-house recruiters, talent acquisition teams, then retained executive search. Thank you for explaining those three differences. I really appreciate it. And I apologize to the audience that I brushed right through
No,
that.
I don't know that you did, but that was just something that was on my mind because, and then your question, if I remember, was like, what's the theme for people going through
Yeah, what's
career
a theme
things?
that you're seeing? Yeah.
I think right now a general theme is a feeling of uncertainty, right? Just general feeling of unease, and yet, um, and yet, especially at the leadership level, a desire to continue to build, each individual wanting to build their careers. And so there's a bit of confusion about whether it's a good time or a bad time to leave a current role and to go get a new one because it feels so
Yeah.
uncertain. It feels so uncertain.
Yeah. 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 I see that too. There are people who we work with that are anticipating I might be laid off at any moment.
Right.
So that anxiety can be really high. Then we get information from the markets that the market is down or flat in hiring. And something when we were preparing for this call that gave me a good, really good feeling, especially for the Get Her Hired audience, is you had shared that in your retained executive search, the roles you're looking for to fill, they're not necessarily, at the whim of the market like some other roles might be. Can you
Absolutely.
explain more about that?
Yeah,
And while you do that, I'm going to step away for just a moment because I hear my dog on the other side of the door eating something that sounds
it's
like
something you
cardboard.
worry about. Okay.
Yeah,
All
I'll
right.
be right back.
You go take care of pup. Yeah. So my perspective on this is, first of all, that from an executive retained search perspective, business doesn't seem to be slowing down. There's uncertainty in the market, but at a certain point in organizations, when you have leadership roles, you don't leave them unfilled. They're just too critical to have a gap in a role like that. Now, it is also true that sometimes when a position comes open, organizations will restructure and they won't backfill that role exactly the same, or they'll combine work. I don't think that's different about today's world than in any other time, right? Organizations should always look at their structure when they have an opening, especially at the top. So we're not really seeing anything that would say if we have an opening, then we're not going to fill it because of the uncertainty in the market. So
Mhm.
not it's
Mhm.
plenty busy. I believe our competitors are plenty busy. There's no summer slowdown because
Yeah.
again, if a leadership role is open, you need the leader back. You need a leader in
Yeah.
that role.
All
And
right. Who feels better about this now hearing this for a moment?
yeah,
Right? Okay. Yeah, you were, and I cut you off there just a moment ago, but this is such a relief for people because I think, we hear the news, and I was just talking to someone this morning about this, that if you're coming right out of college, it is a very barren market right now for people coming right out of college. And then some less critical individual contributor roles that are incredibly competitive, and you really have to stand out. And we'll get more into how do we stand out in this conversation.
yeah,
But it's such a good thing to hear. Like, no, those executive levels they don't slow down. They're not the same.
yeah. Well, and hopefully that means then, because when someone gets one of these roles, that there's a trickle down effect, right? That there's roles that are open in other organizations as they need to fill then the person that we've put into the upper level role. But I agree. I know one of the questions too is like, what impact is AI having on kind of the labor market? And I think what you just said is the impact. That organizations aren't filling those entry level roles with as much speed, I think is two things. What is AI going to do for our business, and whether or not they're actually using it and it's actually making an impact on work, they're slow pedaling because they want to know. And two, uncertainty does create some limitation in growth projections. Like we're uncertain as we're going to grow, if we're going to grow. And when companies grow, they tend to hire at the bottom so that they have people to promote through. And if they're not anticipating growth, it's really hard for them to bring in those entry level roles. So we're seeing those college graduates suffer. And my heart is just broken for all of those parents trying to help their college because I just like my kids just launched and I'm just like, hold on to those jobs, right? Because it's hard time.
It really is. Yeah, we've helped a number of college graduates. It's not our area, but we, on the side we'll help out people
Mhm.
pro bono and
I think you
it
met my
is
daughter, Kate, if I
yeah,
remember correctly.
yeah. It's tough. It's tough. Yeah. It looks like we had a couple questions come in. Anne Marie or Lourdes, are you able to share with us any of those things that came through so far?
Yeah, absolutely. So we had a question, how do you ensure that your information is with the right recruiter and industry, and that that information is updated and represents you well?
Ooh, there's a
Yeah,
lot in that question.
there's a lot in that question. You know, I'm sure this is I love these questions. These are great questions. I'm happy to answer them. I don't feel like I've got magic answers. Like there's no like secret behind the secret here. Um, One of the biggest tools that recruiters are using is LinkedIn. So if your LinkedIn profile is missing information or doesn't represent what you believe to be your strengths, you're missing a way to represent yourself in the marketplace. And a secret about me is that I am not a fan of LinkedIn. I don't like the way the algorithms work. I don't like the lack of flexibility you have in creating it. Like it's not my favorite tool. No one has been able to create a competitor, so that's what we all use. So number one thing is that. Number two is I think there's a perception that, and Kate, you even maybe alluded to it too, like recruiters aren't interested in talking to you unless we have a job that you might fit for, which, I mean, when you think about it, is true. It's true because I'm trying to fill 10 jobs. I mean, I'm not, but if I were, um, my capacity to be able to talk to the people that might not fit those jobs, but might fit some other job I have in the future is limited just from a time perspective. And then if other recruiters are like me, like I don't have a great memory. So like it's not particularly helpful for me to meet with all because I won't remember in 2 months, probably 2 months I'd remember, but 2 years I wouldn't remember.
Mhm.
So the trick is hitting the right person, I think that was part of the question, at the right time. And
Mhm.
um, and that means that you have to keep hitting the people, right? Like you can't say, and it can't be one for one. So if I'm a recruiter and I've got 10 roles and then 1,000 people wanting to meet with me, it don't hit me over and over again. That's not as helpful. I should be in your rotation, but your network should be in your rotation. Because what I do as a
Mhm.
recruiter is when I get a new role, I think, okay, well, who do I know? Who's in my database? Who's in LinkedIn that I can see that has the skill sets I'm looking for? And then who else do I know that might know someone with that skill set that I trust?
Mm.
So it kind of goes back to you got to do the LinkedIn thing. You have to network. When you have updates in your career, you've got a new certification or you've done a new project or you have an update, share it and then do it again, right? I don't know a magic trick yet.
Yeah. Kathy, that is so critical what you just said there. And we know LinkedIn actually did a study on this a few years ago that our first degree network is great. But what you just said too, it's like, okay, who do I know? But who do I know who would know someone
Yes.
who would do
Yeah.
that, right? And so that second degree network is what LinkedIn's research found was the most critical in landing roles. And you just kind of underscored that right now that you've got more than one person, right? So a network implies that there's more than one.
Right.
And then you also have more than one recruiter that you're going with. And So it sounds to me like now some people, Kathy, will say to me, well, I don't want to be pushy.
Mm-hmm. If you're not going to advocate for yourself, who is?
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah. I say be professional.
for sure. Of course, be professional.
Yeah.
That's a baseline.
Yeah.
Baseline assumption.
Yeah. Yeah. You're not being pushy, you're being professional. And I love this. If you're not advocating for yourself, who will? And that
Right.
is true too. If you think about Kathy back when we worked together, it's like if you don't show up for yourself and toot your own horn for a minute about your accomplishments, not about the process you're going through to get to the accomplishment, but like talk about the things you've done. You miss out on those opportunities for promotions and thoughts for being in those special projects, and people don't know about you. You assume
Yeah.
people know about you. Yeah.
Well, what's interesting is right now, and there's recency error in this, but like right now, I'm working in a search that it skews male because it's manufacturing leadership with engineering background, and so my candidate pool, I'm scraping to get diversity, and I'm talking to as many women as I can. And what I have found is that for this particular role, but it translates a little bit. The men that are telling their story about their achievements are very much about like the operational efficiency numbers they've reached, the revenue they've driven, like this is what I have done and what I have achieved in this role. And the women are very much about how I led the team, how we made this happen, what I think I brought to this role, right? It's still that they have achieved good things, but it's much less clear cut that I am proud of the work that I have done and I achieved this. And so there's something about getting comfortable with, even I said like, oh, I kind of lucked into this career, but I worked hard at it,
Yeah.
right? Like it's,
Yeah.
no, I'm really proud of what I've accomplished because
Yeah.
I accomplished it. And it's okay to say that. And it's not
Yes.
lacking humility. It's telling your story of what you've achieved. I don't know. It's just something that I've observed in this role. And I know like I've been translating it backwards. It happens a lot. It's frustrating for me because I'm in a field where numbers are hard to like, I haven't driven revenue directly. So it's like creating that number story in some fields I understand is difficult.
Kathy, we can do it here at Get Her Hired. We need to
I
do a
know, I
session.
know. Well, now I can tell you, right? Because I'm
with
running my
you.
own company, so I got numbers.
Absolutely. We have questions coming in here. Anne-Marie or Lourdes, what's the next thing we got to talk about here?
Yeah, so from a skill set perspective, do you think there are like 3 to 5 top either soft or hard skills necessary to be an effective leader in today's market?
I was just talking to a CEO client yesterday who is talking about how she is leading a business and then walks in every day knowing that there are these worldwide things that are happening that are weighing on her employees' minds. And she somehow has to navigate inspiring people to do work while they've got a lot of other things on their mind, right? So I don't know what that skill set is, but there's something about holding the weight of what your employees might be coping with from an external landscape perspective, and yet still giving them space inside a job to do work and like helping them do that. It might be emotional intelligence, resilience. I mean, that's always been, but I feel as though, Kate, you probably have perspective. I feel like that's on steroids right now. You need resilience to be both an employee and a leader. There's just so much change. There's just so much going on. And then also always go ahead.
No, and I'm thinking about with emotional intelligence, it is a critical competency for so many leaders. And I challenge the people here watching, when you think of someone who you believe has high emotional intelligence, I want you to examine what are the actions they're taking. that tell you they have high emotional intelligence, and that will reveal some leadership characteristics that maybe are things or skills you can grow upon. If they're not strengths you're naturally born with, maybe there's some skills that you can build upon in that emotional intelligence space.
Yeah. To me,
Great.
Kate, this is why you're so good at what you do. To me, one of the things that I believe makes a great leader is really building a connection with their people. And it's a professional connection. It's, yes, I know the names of your children, but it's, I've connected with what motivates you. I've connected with what you enjoy in your work and what you don't. I've connected with what you're struggling with and what your strengths are. And I'm connecting you to those things that you enjoy and that leverage your strength. So, because that's where the magic happens. And that's why I love executive recruiting. Connecting someone and what they love and what they're really good at with the work that needs to be done. And then suddenly, like, you're a high performer, you're highly engaged, you're highly successful. Good leaders make that connection happen. And to me, there's
Yes.
something about emotional intelligence. There's something about that connection. I wrote down communication as another one that, you don't do any of that without being effective at communicating and communicating to different stakeholders at different ways, different levels, like understanding that nuance.
Yeah. Thanks, Kathy. That's great. All right, we've got more questions coming in. Lourdes, did you see any in the Q&A that came across?
Yes. I'm regularly reminding my team how important their work is and the mission we work on together to make positive change in the world. Well, this is more of a comment. This doesn't take away from the concerns, but it does help to empower and encourage.
Yeah.
So focusing back on the mission and encouraging. Wonderful. Great.
We had a question. How do recruiters use LinkedIn to search for the right candidates?
Oh, yeah. How do we do that?
What do you do, Kathy?
What do you do? Well, it's a database, right? So it's a database. And so LinkedIn gives recruiters the opportunity to put in criteria to find people. And so that's why, you'll see a lot of training on getting the right keywords in your LinkedIn profile to represent like who you are and what your experiences are. So that's the basic. What we at Not in Group do is understand more deeply the industry in which we are trying to recruit. So for an organization, we know their industry, and then we know their competitors, and we know other organizations that might have similar cultures or similar ways to work. And then we go deeply into those organizations, understanding their structure, and then finding people from those organizations that might be good candidates for us to talk to. And then it's that what Kate was talking about, that second level connection, right? Okay, so then that's that industry. Now, who's adjacent to that industry where people might know someone? Because it's not just finding the person that might be the candidate, it's finding the person that might know the person that'd be a good candidate.
Excellent. So in what you just shared there, there's a couple nuances I want to just pull the thread on a little bit. You will go into the industry you were just sharing, and you will see if there are people currently employed in that industry or who have connections into that industry. Tell me this, does it matter to you if the person is currently employed, period, or currently employed at that company or in that industry still?
I mean, sometimes it depends. It depends on how many viable candidates there are. So those are two different questions to me. If I'm looking at a similar, like a company that I want to target because I think candidates out of that company are good for the client I have, it doesn't matter if it's 5 years ago that you worked for right now, right? Like that part, I believe it holds in your experience. Not being employed is not a deal breaker. not a deal breaker for executive recruiters. Sometimes it's a deal breaker for our clients, right? So we don't always make the decision. If we find someone that we believe has all of the right things and they're not currently employed, all we're going to do is pressure test the reason they're not employed. We're just going to make sure that we deeply understand what it is, what the circumstances are that make them unemployed. If you've been laid off, that's not a deal breaker at all, right?
Yeah.
You've been termed for performance, like then we're going to dig into that a little bit and understand a little bit differently what's going on there.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I think we meet with people on their worst hair days. That's like they're going to the hairdresser, right? And you come in with your worst hair. And that's the same sometimes with Get Her Hired. And people can feel so much shame and so much pain. It is. I've been laid off. It's incredibly painful to have it happen. And it's so good to hear from you that, yeah, there's going to be biases out there. We can't, whether they're conscious or unconscious biases from whatever sort, but
Right.
like from a recruiting standpoint, that's not going to be a bias they'd encounter working with Naughton Group anyway.
There's so, I have to say, I believe that 50% of the people that I've talked to have been laid off at some point in their career. This is not an unusual thing. This is not, it is just the rough and tumble way of business. Yeah. And if we're trying to knock out people based on that, then we'll knock out some really good candidates. It doesn't make sense. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. Great. Oh my gosh, we've got so many questions coming in. Anne-Marie, lay the next one down here.
Okay. Do you have any rules of engagement you would advise for people when they reach out to a recruiter because they want to be assertive and professional, but not presumptuous or annoying?
Yeah. I love that. I don't know that these are rules, but here's my advice. We keep a database, right? A client relationship management database. And if you have an updated resume in there, that's fantastic. So a great excuse to reach out to your recruiter friends is that you've just made an update to your resume and you want them to have it. It's very low time for the commitment from a recruiter perspective to put that resume in their database and to just note, oh, this person has an update on their resume. Do I have any roles right now? No. Oh yeah. Okay. I'm putting on my database, respond real quick and move on, right? Like that's very minimal effort from the recruiter perspective. And it does plant you in their head for at least a moment. You could also, depending on your relationship, say, if you have time for coffee, I would love that. Opens the door. Maybe they're in that time in their cycle where they are open to meeting with different candidates and or there's something about your background that's intriguing to them that they want to, gives you that opening. I've seen some people say, here's my Calendly, go like set up time with me. That's probably something a recruiter would just feel like, oh, that's presumptuous that I have time for that. Because remember, like you end up in this role, you've got this little title, executive recruiter, and then people think you're their key for jobs. And so a lot of people want to talk to you. And I love that and respect that. And I need to know those people. I read a study once that one human can hold 250 relationships. So that's pretty minimal, right? So there's just not that many relationships that a human can hold. And so you just got to figure out a way around that.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good point because you're getting 500, 5,000, probably, depending on where a recruiter might be at, like at some of these firms like Verseek, these larger, firms that work more generally, could be getting so many notices. Yeah. Okay. Great point. Thank you. Anything else in the question zone we need to answer right now, Lourdes or Anne-Marie? If not, I've got some more.
Yeah, there was a question about resumes. How long does a recruiter look at a resume and what sections do they go to first? So what elements should an effective resume contain?
I don't know that I can speak for all recruiters. I can tell you what I do. I'm looking for titles and clarity of, right? to me, I'm filling a role that has a title, and there's some assumptions with that title that come with it. And I'm looking for other titles that I believe match it, or show a career progression to that. So to the extent that you can make sure your titles are crisp and match what the market would call them, that's helpful.
Mm-hmm.
I do look if a person brings up to the top what their achievements have been. I look at that. Like sometimes there's just like this section of things you're proud that you've achieved, and that's nice. If it just has bullets of like things that you like, I don't look at that. So I don't know why that is. It's just, it's not as meaningful. And then once I've decided that the titles and kind of those achievements rise to the level of like, oh, this might be a match, then I actually go and I look at all the bullets, and especially the first job, because I'm looking to see, is your current experience a good match for the experience I'm looking for?
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I love that. That's really helpful. Yeah, it's something we try to do on both LinkedIn and in the resumes is that market title, the market value title. Some people have very specific internal titles that don't mean anything to the world. And if this is you, if you're watching this and you're like head of customer success, and then it says like something very specific about your department, like IT, CRM, PMO, right? Like
Right.
great, but here's what we do and what we recommend in LinkedIn, and then we also recommend in your resume is to turn those into those market value titles so that a recruiter or a hiring manager knows that title from the commonality of what you might have been doing in that role. So if your title doesn't show up in the drop down in LinkedIn when you are trying to put your title in, know that Kathy can't search for it.
Right.
Okay. So if you're like just typing it in and there's no drop down, a recruiter cannot search for that term. And so what you want to do is find a title that's akin to or adjacent to or very similar to, or maybe it's more of a umbrella title for your area. And then what we recommend in your resume and in your LinkedIn is to include a bullet that says internally known as, or internal title was,
Yep.
something like that. So integrity is really important, and the people we work with don't want to make up information on their documentation. So that's
Sure.
the way that we do that. So you can still be found by Kathy, even though you've got some wackadoo internal title.
Right. I love that approach. I love that approach. And, shout out to Kate. Like, it actually is important that a resume is easy to read, makes a lot of sense, tells your story, and is well written with good grammar and no errors. And right, like those can be bad if you have a bad resume.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. We've got time for maybe one or two more questions. If anyone wants to send in any more, or if Lourdes and Anne-Marie, do you see any more out there that we need to answer?
Yeah, here's an interesting one. How do recruiters think about and weigh experience when someone is looking to switch industries? So what is the best way to show on your resume that your skills are transferable, even if you don't have, a lot of experience in that new industry?
In that industry.
Right.
Well, this is where probably that section about skills. I'm not there are functional resumes that like show like what you've achieved versus your roles in the timeline. And I'm not a fan of those, even though I understand why you would create. I have one myself, and I can never use it because it doesn't tell the story of your career progression. So if you're looking to switch industries, I think what you need to think about is if you actually have a target industry, and this goes to like industry or just job, if you don't feel like you have all the skill sets that a post shows. Think about what are the skill sets that industry would require, or think about if there's a job that has a certain requirement that you don't meet, why are they looking for that requirement? What does that industry demand or need from their employees? And then if you've not done it before or not exactly in the way that they're saying, what are the things that you do bring to that? So for example, I'm looking for someone that has, really great operational chops. They've done Six Sigma. They've really done a lot of that work. Well, I've got candidates who maybe haven't done that directly, but have indirectly done it, or have done it in a different way, or have done it for the nonprofit board that they're in, or like it's not on their resume and the job they've done, but they've got the skills to bear. So how thinking through what those skills might be and then bringing those to the forefront of your resume is what I would do. I've definitely hired people that don't check all of the boxes of the skill sets if they've got comparable skills and they're also a great cultural fit.
Oh, that's great to hear, Kathy. I think that a lot of people will enjoy knowing that because I talk with a lot of people who want to pivot. They're like, I love doing X, but I just need to get out of this industry, or I love this industry, but I have to stop doing X.
Well, and I would say when you happen to have the opportunity to work with an executive recruiter, what we have to do is tell the story to the client as to why it's okay that experience isn't as direct. And if you can help me fill in that story, then I can sell that, right? Because there's a little bit of sales that I'm doing of candidates to my client.
I love that. That is so good. Okay. I think we've got time for one more. Are there any other questions that are in the hopper there, Anne-Marie?
Let's take a look. There are so many good questions. So we may get back to some of you individually. Oh, someone asked, does a PhD scare organizations away? This person recently completed their PhD, added it to their resume, but had peers say that the addition transfers as quote unquote too expensive to organizations.
Well, this is a little bit hard for me to answer personally because I come from higher education where I know actually a PhD it like makes it so you're not making money. Like it's actually the opposite story. I think it really is. Does that PhD match up? Is it helpful in telling the story of why you're qualified for that position? And if it is helpful, then highlight it. And if it isn't, just put it down in your education. It's fine. It's not going to be for me, it would never be a knockout.
Yeah. 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 I like that. And that's important. I thank you, Kathy, for that. Like we have some people that come in, they have all sorts of degrees, JDs, MBAs, they've got certifications as a PMP or their SHRM or their, got their Scrum Alliance or, there's all these different pieces we can put there, but what really matters the most is what is that next role you're looking for and is it relevant? Highlight that, right? Because if we just talked to someone today who they're looking for a VP level role, and yes, they have their PMP, their project management, but what we have decided with that candidate is because of what they want to do next, we're going to still say they have their PMP down in their education and certification section, but we're not going to highlight it at the top of their materials.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Very good. Well, we are coming to the close today. We've got lots of questions that came out, and what we're going to try to do is answer those in our follow-up to today. But before we go, and as we're getting ready to say goodbye to Miss Kathy here, you've just been this is such a good conversation today. Could you leave us with one thought about how we can improve our searches? What would that be? How can we improve our searches?
Yeah. Be not afraid. Just be not afraid. And resilience, right? Like one of the 3 top things for leadership is resilience. When you're in a search, resilience is so important. Like I've been rejected from so many roles, like so many jobs. Like just keeping your head about you and know that it's not actually a reflection of your skill sets that you might get rejected for a job or your worth, right? It's just the way of the world.
Yeah.
But don't be afraid to apply for those jobs where you don't think you check every box in the qualifications. If you have a story to tell about why you actually do have that skill, even if you feel like it's not a checked box, like go for it.
Yeah.
If a position has 100 applicants, apply. If you know a second level connection to a job and to a company, ping them. Like just be fearless in the face of this.
Mhm.
Because there's nothing bad that's going to happen for you being proactive around your job search. Like nothing bad.
Yes. I love that. Thank you, Kathy.
Sure.
I tell people bring the clipboard camp mom
That's
energy,
right.
right? Like
That's right. Yeah.
just pretend like you're doing it for someone else, but actually do it for yourself, okay?
Is it the goldfish that just never remembers when something bad happens to them? Like be a
That's right.
goldfish,
Just keep swimming.
keep swimming. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, where can we find out more about Naughton Group, Kathy, and how do we get in touch with you if we've got questions for you?
Yeah. Well, don't be afraid to link in with me. I'm on LinkedIn, Kathy Arnold. And Naughton Group is just naughtongroup.com, which is NAUGHTIN. Naughtongroup.com is out there, and you can see all of our bios in there as well. And there's always peacockblue.com, which is my HR consulting firm, and where you can actually also see Naughton Group because they're one of my partners there. So lots of ways to get a hold of me, and please don't hesitate to do so.
Thank you, Kathy. Well, I'm going to launch a question to everyone to see what's an actionable takeaway from today, what has been really helpful for you, and you can answer with anything or nothing, up to you. And before we go, wanted to let you know our next undeniable session. We're taking next week off because it is the 4th of July week, shorter week, but we'll be back on July 11th at noon. We're going to have a executive coach on. And so if you have ever had questions for an executive coach, and what an executive coach does typically is they help you think about what you want, what you're excellent at, where you want to go, and then your values, your truth. How can you then turn that into what you want in your career? Okay. So if you've ever had questions for a executive coach or you've been wanting to, come on over on July 11th, noon. We'll send out the link and the recap so you can get scheduled up for that. And this is about career transition. So it sounded like all of you here today are looking for a role. So that means you're in a career transition. So this would be applicable for you. And Heather Tibbles Vasilem, she's actually my coach. I brought on my old boss. This is how the network works, right?
Your
I'm
network,
bringing on
Kate.
my coach. So Heather is wonderful. And we'd love to have you here for that one too. So we've got a bunch of answers. I wonder how I've never done this where people write in answers. Let me see if I can see what the answers are so that we can see the takeaways for today. Of course, it's glitchy. No, that didn't work. Okay, well, I'm so sorry. I don't know how to share the answers with everybody. Kathy, thank you so much for coming today. We really appreciate your time and all that you've given us today. And we wish you great success with Peacock Blue and have fun filling your roles and have fun doing all your summer activities once it's sunshiny out again.
Thank you, Kate. It was such a pleasure.
All right. Take care, everybody. Have a great day. Bye-bye.